Hello, Patrick. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Elijah, I'm doing great, and Happy New Year to you and all your listeners out there. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Beautiful, and thank you so very much for being here. You see, I truly appreciate you. And you see, Patrick, oftentimes I love to thank my guest for two things. And I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So, firstly, my man, I want to say thank you so very much for investing in yourself. You see, Patrick, you are on this platform right now because you did invest that in yourself. And oftentimes, my man, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. They say some couple of months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Patrick, there was this very tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, my man, just recently I was on that same road, and this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree. You see, the mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance, and immediately I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches, and not just mangoes now, Patrick. I'm talking about ripe mangoes. Yeah, it was
Ready
such
to
a,
ready to
I
eat.
tell you, man, it was such a lovely experience that day, and I was so excited. Here is my point. The fact that,
Awesome.
yeah, the fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Patrick that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing, your philosophies, your insights, the impact your work is having. And now you are offering your solutions, Patrick. These stuffs are beautiful. And just before I sent you that request, I said to myself, I've got to benefit from these beautiful things Patrick is doing. And not only me now, because I don't want to look selfish, and even with the audience. And here we are today with the amazing Patrick. So thank you so very much for doing that yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if Patrick had said nope, there was nothing Elisha could do about it. Thanks so much, my man.
It's my pleasure, absolutely, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you and to speak to your audience because
Beautiful. Yeah,
I don't have a choice. I've had such an amazing life and so many great lessons taught to me by other people, by the universe, by God, whoever the teacher might happen to be. That I have a moral obligation to share those lessons and that knowledge with people.
exactly. I love that moral obligation. That's a beautiful one. So let's get started, my man. You see, I am quite excited to have you on the show today for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Patrick, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information, and not just knowledge alone, but the application of it. And you see, my man, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness, ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason why I'm excited to have the incredible Patrick on the show is for the sake of the audience. They say, Patrick, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced, my man, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, Patrick, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or your professional journey, because right now we are so curious. Want to know how
Okay.
Patrick got here? Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Patrick, my
Okay.
man, over to you.
Elijah, I'll give you the short version because I know everyone's time is valuable. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States, and raised in a very blue collar Irish neighborhood. My parents, first generation Irish immigrants, and so we had a very not quite poor upbringing, but we didn't have a lot of money. We shared a house with my grandparents and. My dad was working three jobs, so it was very blue collar upbringing, and I never had much expectations for my life. Right in my family, if you became a police officer or a fireman, you were doing well, and if you became a priest, then that was great because that was
Mm.
really important. so so. But then, I had a tremendous fear. I saw a plane crash when I was 6 years old, and I had this. It planted this seed of fear that just grew into a whole tree with me because I was afraid of flying. I was afraid of talking to people. I had an abusive grandfather, and he'd whip us with his belt, my brother and I,
Mm.
and so it was just my upbringing wasn't setting me up for success, and it was setting me up for a life of fear. And so I was always trying to overcome this fear and the shame that I had inside of all this fear. And I thought if I became a great athlete, I'd have courage and I'd become strong. And so I spent 6 years training for the Olympics in the sport of rowing, and I finished second in the Olympic trials in the United States, and then raced the World Cup for 3 years. And I was very courageous on the water, where it was comfortable, controllable, no surprises. And this gets to how your brain is wired. I was still a wimp, just terrified of everything off the water. And so I thought, okay, well, if I make a lot of money after the Olympics, I'll be really courageous and I'll be strong and I'll be happy. And I started a couple of companies, was doing everything I could to make money. And then I woke up one morning, having started my second company. And my goal at that time, I was about 35 years old. My goal was 40 by 40. If I made myself a net worth of $40 million by the time I'm 40 years old, then I'd be courageous. I'd be successful. I'd be the man. And that was the attitude I had back then because I was always trying to overcome this fear and the shame. And I woke up one morning and I could barely move my arm. And I went to the doctors, and the doctor said, "Oh, it looks like a staph infection." And he said, "Okay, we'll give you some antibiotics, take a blood test, and the nurse will call you back this afternoon." The nurse didn't call me back. The doctor called me back. And that single phone call changed my life because he said, "We've run a bunch of tests on you, and it looks like you have no white blood cells. You have no
Mm.
immune system. And we don't know why. And we're going to see if we can figure this out today or tomorrow, but you have to come into the hospital right now and check in." So I went to the hospital locally in Virginia at the time, and they didn't have a lot of knowledge about what was happening with me. And they said, "Okay, we're going to send you to the best hospital in the world, Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland." So it was a couple hours away. They sent me up to Hopkins, and my wife was sitting at the end of the bed, and I was in the bed after they'd run a bunch of tests, and the doctor came in, and he said, "Listen, we're not quite sure what's happening with you, but we have a treatment that we're going to try and use, and if it doesn't work, you've got about 2 weeks left to live. So we think you
Really?
should try and get your affairs in order and say your goodbyes." My wife was 6 months pregnant at the time, and we had a daughter who was 1 year old. Uh, this news hit both of us like we couldn't believe. The only feeling I had, Elijah, at the time was regret. I thought, I've been so afraid of everything for the 35 years of my life that I missed out on what could have been a great life. I missed out on going back to, spring breaks, family reunions, going to see my relatives in Ireland, all these things I missed out on because I was too afraid to fly. And then I missed out on asking out girls. I missed out on taking risks and doing interesting, projects or sports, all because I was afraid. And then I realized I'm about to die and I didn't do any of that stuff, but I'm dying anyways. And so I said to my wife, I said, if I get out of here, I'm going to overcome this fear of flying, and I'm going to be the kind of dad my daughter deserves to have, that'll get on a plane and take her to Disney World or take her to Ireland. And that was my commitment at that point. But I didn't know if I'd live or if I die. And not to give away the ending, Elijah, but I lived. So that completely changed everything, because when I got out of the hospital, I went down to the local airport and I signed up for flying lessons. And that's
Wow.
a whole nother story. The first lesson I took, I think I had to go to the bathroom like 4 or 5 times before I even got in the plane. I was so scared. The second time we went flying, we went over these little mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it was turbulent. And we're in this little 2-seater plane, and I think I actually pooped myself, just like a little bit, not a lot. And then the amazing thing, Elijah, after all this, maybe 10 lessons in, I began to love flying. And I
Wow.
thought it was the most fulfilling, fascinating, challenging, exciting thing that I've ever encountered. And so I got my private pilot's license, I got my instrument rating, I got my commercial pilot's license, I got my seaplane rating, and now I fly stunt planes. I fly anything with a wing, basically,
Wow.
and really, really enjoy the experience. And so that taught me the lesson. And this is in my first book, Fear is Fuel. This is kind of the center of the lesson. That taught me the lesson that all of our dreams are on the other side of fear. So we have this fear that keeps us away from our dreams. But if we just get to the other side of it, whether it's starting a business, creating a charity, taking a lifelong trip, any of these dreams that we have, there's always fear that tries to block us from getting there. So one of the things that I tell people all the time, and I think this is why the book Fear is Fuel hit number 5 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, because people really resonate with that message that all of our dreams are on the other side of fear. So let's figure out how to get to that other side, how to get to that dream life that we all deserve.
Amazing. I tell you, Patrick, this is a very inspiring one. And thank you so, so very much for sharing it. I tell you, because that's so true. A lot of books, inventions, music, and stuff that wouldn't even see the light because these guys are so scared of putting it out there. And thank you for writing that wonderful book. So let's begin from that, the subject fear. So how can fear become a competitive advantage? Got that?
Sure. So I think, and that's why the title of that book is Fear is Fuel. I think we can use fear because what happens in our body when we get scared is we get ready to do one of 3 things. We've got this fear center that was programmed 2 million years ago, right? There's a 2 million-year-old piece of software running on this gland called the amygdala. And the amygdala gives us 3 instructions: fight, flight, or freeze. When the amygdala activates, all it wants to do is fight, flight, or freeze. So to do that in the best way possible, it gets our body and our mind completely ready to fight or to flee or to freeze. And the way it does that is it empties all the blood out of our digestive system, sends it very quickly out to the muscles. It opens up what's called the blood-brain barrier, where you get more oxygen into your brain cells and your brain starts to work faster. It dilates your pupils so we start to see better. It increases the circulation in your ears inside the ear canals so we hear better. So basically, we're tuned to be the best performers we possibly can in our life. This is why everyone's heard the story about a child that was trapped underneath a car, and a 60-kilogram woman picks up the car, a 120-pound woman picks up the car to get her son out, right? That's the kind of change that happens to our body and our mind when we have fear. So the trick is learning to recognize fear for what it is, this 2 million-year-old piece of software that's acting on our brain, and to change that into being something that is to survive, to something that's going to help us perform. Because now we're at our best. So now we just have to control it. And the way to do that is to realize that our brain is a prediction engine. So we try to predict everything that could possibly happen in the future all the time. We're constantly predicting if we walk into a bedroom and we flip on the light switch, our brain is thinking there's a 90% chance the light will come on. There's a 10% chance it won't come on. If the light doesn't come on, then our brain starts to predict again. And it says, okay, there's a 95% chance the bulb is gone, and there's a 5% chance that the circuit breaker switched. If you go to change the bulb and 10 baby snakes come piling out on you, you're going to freak out like crazy because your brain didn't predict that.
Yeah.
So that's where and that's where fear comes from, is when we can't predict what's going to happen in the future.
When we can't predict what's going to happen in the future.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty
Is what that is. Uncertainty. That creates fear. So
creates
now,
fear.
if we get comfortable with uncertainty, if we say, okay, I don't know what's going to happen in my business tomorrow. So the new book that I'm releasing in March, called The Founder's Creed, is for entrepreneurs. And one of the big things in that book is taking the neuroscience research from the first one and putting it to use for businesses. And my point with them is that if you're starting a business, you're doing a startup, and you've got some employees and maybe you've got some customers, if you get everyone comfortable with uncertainty, with not knowing what's going to happen in the future, then that's a competitive advantage. You might have this fear, you might be feeling it, but you're not running away or you're not freezing. You're saying, okay, that fear, let's use it as a superpower. And we're going to go lean into that uncertainty, because that's going to give us an advantage over everybody else who's afraid of the uncertainty and trying to keep things the way that they are.
So we move from surviving to performing. I got that. So
exactly right.
Yeah.
So and there's a speed to that gives you a competitive advantage.
I got that. So what is I'm not sure I'm going to get this correctly, but I'm going to try. What is it BOODA Loop?
That's your secret to getting there, Elijah.
So can you talk to us about that? And where did that come from?
Yes, and so your listeners are probably thinking Buddha, like the guy living under the tree, getting enlightened under the tree, and it's actually BOODA, and it's an acronym for Believe, Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. And where that came from is the 1960s had an Air Force training center, basically Top Gun, for U.S. pilots. And there was an instructor there named John Boyd. And they called him 42nd Boyd because he said any Top Gun pilot can come in and they can get directly behind me on my six, as it's called in aviation. And within 40 seconds, I'll maneuver around and get them in radar lock and kill them. And he said, anyone who can beat me gets a steak dinner. And he never had to pay out a steak dinner in the 10 years he was an instructor. And the way that he came up with a theory of how to win an air-to-air combat was by looking at the energy that it's used, the maneuverability of the pilots, all the things they did. And he came up with something called the OODA Loop, which is observe what's going on around you, orient yourself, meaning use all your past history to understand the situation, decide what to do, and act. So that observe, orient, decide, and act, that OODA loop, you go through it once, and as soon as you act, you get more data back again. So you observe, you orient, you decide, you act again. You get more data back, so you act again. Boyd's philosophy was that you go through that loop faster than your opponent and you win. And the speed of going through that loop determines who the winner is. Now, there's a lot of sports teams that have adopted the OODA loop. There's other militaries. There's the Marine Corps used it for maneuver warfare doctrine. So a lot of people have tried to use the OODA loop either in business or in sports, and it's lacking one key component. So when a pilot gets accepted into Top Gun, into that school that Boyd taught at, they know they are among the best pilots in the world. They know they have the best airplanes. They believe they have more time practicing than anyone else. They have a tremendous amount of conviction, or what I call belief, that they're the best in the world. Now, if you're starting a business and you have this incredible view of what the future can be, and let's say you're Elon Musk and you're saying, okay, I think there can be a $35,000 all electric car that can go 200 miles on one charge. And that's your vision of the future is something fantastic. There's the reality of where things are today. And again, we go back to that uncertainty, Elisha, that people don't want to think about 10 years into the future because it's uncertain and they can't predict it. But you've got these guys and these women who are called founders who start companies, and they're the ones who create a movement by believing what they have in the future is what they can create today. Now, the distance between having that idea and getting the world to believe that's what I call the belief gap. And one of the things I talk about in the Founders Creed is how to use that BOODA Loop first to get your supporters, your team, your customers, your investors, your employees to believe. Once they believe, then you can observe, orient, decide, and act, and start it over again. Because now more people believe you. You observe, orient, decide, and act. Now more people are believing you. So you cross that belief gap by using that Buddha doctrine, by keep doing those steps. And this is something that happens weekly in a startup that's trying to really create something great, create a movement and change the world.
Amazing. I just learned something amazing and so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, my man.
Absolutely.
So to bring this to an end, Patrick, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those individuals who like to reach out to you, learn more about the wonderful stuff you're doing, get your book and get the upcoming one, how can that be possible?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you all for sticking with me, because I know time is the most valuable thing in this world of doom scrolling. So I appreciate everyone staying and listening to the podcast. If some of the ideas resonate with you from a business side, The Founders Creed is the book I've got coming out in March 1st, and you can pre-order it on Amazon, or you can go to thefounderscreed.com and pre-order it there. And the original book that was the bestseller, Fear is Fuel, is available now on Amazon. And anyone who wants to reach out to me, my website is pjsweeney.com. And I'm happy to answer questions or do anything I can to help. You've got a great audience, and I hope there's a lot of people out there who are doing things to change the world. And if you have an idea that you think will change the world and that you think will be amazing 5 years, 10 years from now, and you're afraid to do it, I just remind you that all your fears, all the things that get in your way are just an illusion. And your dream is on the other side of all those fears. So face those fears, get through them, use them as fuel to power you on and to do what people say you couldn't do, and take the risk. That's what I'd say I think is most important, Elisha.
What a great reminder, Patrick. Fear is fear. I got that, my man. So that's going to be the end of the show, Patrick. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing this wonderful stuff with us. It means a whole lot, man. Thank you.
Elisha, thank you so much. Thank you all.